Again, all practical and good advice. And maybe time for some practical good advice to President Trump, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. This relationship is frayed, my friends, and we want to get it back. Help us get them back after this.
When you say a personal attack, did you hear what she said about me long before I went after her? Did you hear? She made horrible statements. She knows they're not true. She said terrible things. So I just responded in kind. Look, you think Nancy's the same as she was? She's not.
Well, enough of the bickering, and let's just get to work. The parties are sniping each other. It's always been a problem, especially when it's under different control, right? I mean, the White House under one and the House, let's say in this case, under another. But there was a time when at least they were able to let bygones be bygones and try to get things done. I know it's a lot easier said than done these days. Democratic strategist Nathan Rubin, we got Republican strategist Ash Wright, and the Washington Examiner Susan Ferricchio. Susan, people may harken back to Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill started out as a bit of an acrimonious relationship a couple of years in. They were pals trying to deal with each other. Maybe the same will happen here between the president and Nancy Pelosi, but there's been a lot of scorched earth. How do you unscorch that?
I don't know that you can, and it's not because of what happened last week. It's because of what's going to continue to happen, and that's Democrats are going to keep pushing for these investigations, the subpoenas, the court fights over Trump's tax records and financial documents. And it's going to lead to more calls for impeachment, and I think it's going to keep Pelosi kind of elevated in this criticism of the president and making these remarks about him being engaging in a cover-up and perhaps covering up a crime. I just don't see it going away. She's under a lot of pressure to put forward that message, and I think that that's not going to end. And that's probably more than what happened last week. That's probably why things are not going to get resolved between her and the president anytime soon.
Well, I wonder if there should be an Ash Wright. I mean, maybe at the Reagan example, working with Tip O'Neill again, it started out dicey, but they learned to find common ground and work with each other. But there was a sense, Ronald Reagan had, he was getting a lot of his way, but he would always advise his people, don't shove it in the other guy's face. It could be the same on the part of the speaker. I want to help him out because we have mutual interests here that could benefit Democrats as well as Republicans. He was particularly that way when Democrats picked up a lot of seats in the midterm election of Ronald Reagan's first term. So he figured, look, I've got to do something so that we can both be productive here. Do you sense any of that happening now?
I mean, I think we would hope so, but no, there's, very different leadership styles today when compared to, Ronald Reagan. And one of the things that's mainly different is they're having this fight, these personal arguments in front of the entire country and in front of the entire world. When we look back in time and in history, they were able to actually do that, have these arguments in back rooms, and it was kind of more of a gentleman's game than it is today. It's unfortunate, but it's the world that we live in. And I think, Susan is, correct. Both bases are as divided as Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump are. I mean, if you look at Trump's base, they sent him to Washington, D.C. to deliver on promises like economic growth, on border security, and not let liberals push him around. And he's doing that exact same thing. And Nancy's base is asking the exact same thing from her against the president. And so that's where we're at today. I don't see any end to it, unfortunately, anytime soon.
Well, something has changed. I don't know what it is, and I'm not casting aspersions on either side. I know how this goes. But, Nathan, Nancy Pelosi came out of that meeting with Democrats different. I don't know how to, whether chastened or reminded that many of them, many more than maybe she suspected, want the president impeached. And maybe that is where she got the thought about him, covering things up. But saying that and knowing full well you have a meeting with the president hours later, she had to recognize that would change the tone. And do you think something in that meeting or something she heard from those members that this, this rage against the president and pushing impeachment, despite her warnings not to go far, something changed?
Well, I think to your point earlier, the sniping back and forth certainly is not unprecedented. What is unprecedented is an executive who says you can legislate or you can investigate but you cannot do both. And Neil, you know as well as I do that Article 1 of the Constitution, our founders and framers created the legislative branch first, and it says right in there that their job is to write and pass laws and conduct
you're
oversight
right, but it
over
does
the
not
executive
say
branch.
about presuming something ahead of even getting those investigations going. Would you acknowledge at least, she jumped the shark by already making it's a clear cover-up, he's been covering things up, accepting it as fact.
If she had said that prior to the Mueller report's release, I would have said she jumped the shark. But we can all read that 400-page report for ourselves. There are 10 instances of obstruction of justice alleged against this president, and we need more people to put country over party. And right now, Nancy Pelosi is advocating
that's very different than saying someone is a cover-up, right?
As well as
you know that by saying whatever you feel about that, and then to kind of feign surprise when the president says this meeting would be kind of unproductive, right?
Well, it's hard to say that he's not covering it up when he's obstructing
but what if
any
I trashed you right
investigation
before this segment? What if I trashed you before this segment? You're a very honorable, wonderful guy. And if I trashed you and framed it that way, or did either to your colleagues there, you would just wonder, what the hell am I doing on with this dude?
Well, if you look back to Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, yeah, they had an acrimonious relationship, but they were able to pass legislation and get stuff done in a divided Congress. This executive simply doesn't have the
I don't see it. Well, no. You can't put it all on him. Susan, I don't see that happening. I don't.
I agree. I think it's going to be tough going forward. It's true about Gingrich and Clinton.
Right.
A lot of that was pre-impeachment, though. So.
All right. Guys, I wish we had more time, but we don't.